Vivek, I was doing research to prepare for the interview today, and I saw someone on Twitter saying you are the only candidate for president to openly state that he would free Ross Ulbricht, Edward Snowden, and Julian Assange. I have not seen you say that. Is that a correct statement of your views?
Yeah, my wall's falling out behind me, so don't mind that. Yes, it is. It is a correct statement from my vantage point. I think that Julian Assange, let's start with I think he's the easiest of the cases. He was actually somebody who was punished for publishing information leaked by government officials, including Chelsea Manning, who had her sentence commuted by President Obama because she's a member of a favored political class. She's trans. I don't believe in two standards of justice. I really don't, Hugh. I think that we have one standard of justice for all Americans. Much of what the DC press corps does on a given day involves printing leaked information from government officials and whistleblowers. Yet Julian Assange was a member of a disfavored political class at the time. That's why he was ultimately punished. So now I think we do have two standards of justice in the country. One of the things I'm going to do as U.S. president is to fix that, to address it by actually applying the same standard of justice regardless of your political persuasion. Not one for Antifa and conservatives who are labeled domestic terrorists if they show up at school board meetings. Not one for Trump, not one for Biden, not one for Julian Assange, not one for Chelsea Manning. That's what I stand for, and that's not a Republican or Democrat issue.
It's an interview, not a debate. I want to remind my audience that. Ross Ulbricht, tell us about your position on Ross Ulbricht.
Yeah, so look, I've studied up on his case. I think I met his mother twice, actually. The first time I met his mother was months ago. She actually invigorated my interest in getting into the details on this. He's a guy who has served, or will have served, certainly by October of this year, over 10 years in prison. I think it is an unfair standard that we use for him for running a platform when much of Silicon Valley, Snapchat, let's just take that as an example, much of the fentanyl that youth access across this country come from actually fentanyl poisoning through Percocet and other drugs that are illegally sold via Snapchat, the platform. That doesn't mean that Evan Spiegel or somebody else who's the executive at Snapchat is a drug dealer. But it does mean that the platform that's being used is something that we have to examine as a society for how we're looking at how kids, in this case, are purchasing drugs or fentanyl. Well, I think that Ross Ulbricht, I think there was a lot in that case that smelled rotten to me, including the initial supposed allegations of murder for hire, but which the government didn't actually charge in the end. I think it reeks of a certain kind of selective prosecution, which is the number one thing that I care about restoring justice around you is I do not believe in selective prosecution for certain classes over others while leaving others protected. The guy has served 10 years. No doubt if he had done a plea deal, and there have been conflicting media reports on this as to whether or not he was offered one, 10 years would have been about what he would have served. I think that that's sufficient for applying a dual standard of justice. No, I think that he also deserves a commutation of sentence. In that case, it wouldn't be a pardon, but it would be commuting his sentence.
Edward Snowden.
Yes, so this is a tough case. But where I come down is, look, I think that once we have learned the level of corruption that our government actually has engaged in repeatedly lying to the public, in a certain form, it's a form of selective prosecution to not actually prosecute the government actors who broke the law, but simply to prosecute the one government actor who did expose it by technically violating a law of a different kind. Here again, I think that Edward Snowden, part of what made his acts heroic, and I would go so far as to say that I disagreed with them at the time, but there's a certain heroism in it at the same time, is that he took a risk that he didn't have to take in order to actually expose to the public what the public did not already know, and change that would not have happened in terms of delivering accountability to the government if he hadn't taken that risk. Part of what makes that risk admirable, just like Rosa Parks long ago, is the willingness to bear punishment he already has. That's also why I would ensure that he was a free man.
Wait. Did you just compare Rosa Parks to Edward Snowden?
No, I did not. But I did compare the aspect of their willingness to take a risk in order for, at the time, breaking a rule that at the time was punishable. Yes, some people have to take a risk. That's part of what drives progress in the country. And so it was progress of very different kinds. But yes, did Edward Snowden contribute to us making progress in delivering accountability to a part of the national security establishment that wasn't previously held accountable? Absolutely, he did.
What about Airman Teixeira?
I'd have to, like I said, I took a long time to get to my position on Edward Snowden as well as Ross Ulbricht. I'm in the process of doing that one by one for a number of other cases that I'm in the process of studying, Hugh. But one of the things, you and I have said this since the first time we spoke, I'm not going to give you an answer off the cuff. Everything I'm with Ross Ulbricht, with Edward Snowden, with Julian Assange, that's after careful study and consideration that I've arrived at my position. But what I can tell you is we will have a list of day one pardons by the time I take office to say that we have one standard of justice in the United States that does not apply selectively based on your political beliefs or whether or not you're a member of a disfavored political class.